Ladies and gentlemen, once again, welcome to Sophia Fireplace, the font of wisdom from the global south, where untold stories rise from the embers of history and the voices of our ancestors whisper truths the world forgot. Today's episode takes us into the heart of 19th century Uganda, where a remarkable act of surgical brilliance shattered the colonial assumptions and revealed an uncomfortable truth: that Africa was never without science. It was simply written out of script. You will hear the story of a cesarean section, not in a gleaming European hospital, but in a rural village in the Banyoro Kingdom. A story documented by a stoned British missionary and carried forward by African scholars like Vivian Kobusinje. This is not just a story about medicine, it's about memory, about the knowledge we inherited, and about how much has been ignored, erased, or dismissed because it didn't come wrapped in European packaging. So, lean in, listen closely, because sometimes the past doesn't just teach us something new, it demands we unlearn what we thought we knew. Let me take you back to 1878. A British medical missionary named Dr. Robert Falcon travels deep into the heart of Uganda to the powerful Banyoro Kingdom. What he witnesses there will shake the foundations of Western medicine. Falcon observes a cesarean section not in a modern hospital but in a rural African village. And what's astonishing? It's not a desperate last-ditch effort to save life. It's routine, it's practiced, it's refined. The woman is gently strapped to a bed. She's given banana wine not just to calm her, but to serve as both an anesthetic and antiseptic. Around her, a team of trained male practitioners move with confidence. The lead surgeon, using red-hot irons and handmade tools, opens the womb with incredible precision. Assistants stand ready, not panicked, but purposeful. The bleeding is controlled, the uterus carefully managed, and once the baby is safely delivered, the incision is closed with iron spikes. Yes, iron spikes, and then dressed with a mixture of chewed medicinal roots and a touch of spit, and wrapped with a banana leaf. Sounds primitive? Think again. Falcon documents every detail, and when he checks on the mother 11 days later, she and her newborn are alive, healing, and thriving. The only complication, her milk supply is low, something the village women stepped in to help with, taking turns nursing the baby until the mother's milk freely flows. Vivian Kobusinje, a Ugandan TV producer and African history scholar, says this kind of cesarean had been practiced for generations and still is in parts of rural sub-Saharan Africa today. It's not new. It was not miraculous. It was tradition, science, skill passed down over centuries. Falcon shares his findings with the Edinburgh Obstetrical Society in 1884, at a time when European doctors were just beginning to understand antiseptics. Imagine how this revelation must have landed. Africans performing life-saving surgeries with greater success and cleanliness than any hospital in Europe? It makes you wonder how much brilliance did we overlook because we weren't ready for it. Let us look at the global south before the Blackboard. Long before the chalkboard stood at the front of classrooms, education in the global South thrived under open skies and thatched roofs. It lived in the rhythm of daily life, flourishing in homes, forests, shrines, farms, and community circles. Ladies and gentlemen, every space, every moment was a classroom. The pounding of millet, the weaving of baskets, the telling of evening tales beneath a crescent moon. Each was a lesson in patience, skill, history, and moral code. This education was not abstract or distant. It was participatory, embodied, and intergenerational. Children learned not by memorizing, but by doing, watching, and listening. Grandmothers and grandfathers passed down wisdom through proverbs. Hunters trained boys through long and silent walks in the bush. Midwives whispered secrets of herbs and healing. The blacksmith's forge became a laboratory. The drumbeat a language. The ritual a syllabus. At its core was Ubuntu. I am because we are. A philosophy that placed the community at the center of every learning experience. A child's knowledge was not their own possession, but part of a shared inheritance nurtured for the good of all. Learning was about becoming human through others, not competing against them. In some communities, ujamaa, or familyhood, shaped economic and agricultural learning, teaching that survival was tied to solidarity, that the land and its fruits belonged to many, not to the few. In others, elders reminded the young of Sankofa to go back and fetch what was left behind, because one could not walk forward without knowing where they had come from. Knowledge was not confined to four walls or assessed by timed tests. It was measured by how well one lived in harmony with others, with nature, and with the unforeseen forces that govern life. It was communal, fluid, spiritual, woven in the very fabric of being. It shaped not only how people thought, but how they loved, worked, worshipped, and dreamed. Teachers were elders, blacksmiths, herbalists, midwives, to mention. In the community, all responsible adults took part in the teaching because, as the saying goes, it took a village to raise a child. Or as the Baganda in Uganda put it, omwana ddiba lya mbogo terizingwa omu, meaning a child is like the buffalo's hide, you cannot fold it alone. These educators imparted knowledge through daily practice and oral traditions, focusing on character formation, ecological sustainability, communal responsibility, and spiritual well-being. Growing from ethnographic reflections and decolonial scholarship, Day 2008, Sopel 1993, and Ochiti 1973, we at Sofila contrast these traditional models with the contemporary competence-based curricula CBC, currently implemented in several African countries. While CBC aims to address practical skills and contextual learning, the voice of indigenous educators remains marginal in both design and implementation processes. In Africa, it is said, you cannot build a house and ignore the stone cutter. Despite good intentions, these reforms often fail to incorporate indigenous pedagogical tools or epistemologies, instead relying on Western frameworks of knowledge. Ladies and gentlemen, there is an ongoing dominance of global North philosophies. For example, Piaget, Dewey, and others have shaped education systems that claim to serve the global South, while largely ignoring African theories such as Ubuntu, Ujamaa, and Sankofa. The result is a curriculum that is misaligned with the local needs, often unable to address persistent development challenges ranging from youth unemployment to environmental degradation. We at Sofira argue that the failure lies not in education per se, but in its disconnection from the lived realities, cultural logics, and aspirations of its people. Therefore, ladies and gentlemen, there is an urgent need to reimagine curriculum grounded in philosophies, languages, and communal ethics of the global South. Anchoring reforms in indigenous knowledge systems can produce education that is not only relevant but also bridging generational wisdom with contemporary innovation. Therefore, ladies and gentlemen, there is an urgent need to reimagine curriculum grounded in philosophies, languages, and communal ethics of the global South. Anchoring reforms in indigenous knowledge systems can produce education that is not only relevant but also regenerative, bridging generational wisdom with contemporary innovation. Only when local educators and theories are placed at the center of curriculum design can education truly become a transformative tool for sustainable development. Ladies and gentlemen, allow me to stop there. Talking about coloniality of power, coloniality of knowledge, and coloniality of the affect is like eating an elephant. You can't swallow an elephant, but if you cut it in pieces, preserve it, you will eat it. We are faced with an elephant. We are going to eat it, but we must eat it intentionally and piecemeal. We meet again next time.